everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bonus Points podcast. I'm Joe Garrett, as always, been joined by Ollie Guy. Hello, Ollie.
Hello, Joe.
Hello.
You gonna ask me for a joke?
No, I think it's okay just to have a normal human introduction to a podcast as best we can. But yeah, welcome to the podcast. If you haven't listened before, basically it's two friends chatting about different video games throughout all different eras of gaming. We discuss it in depth after playing them for a couple of weeks, and then we debate where they should go on a overall leaderboard. And the game that we have played and will be discussing today is called Alpha Protocol.
Alpha Protocol from 2010. Would you like to hear the little synopsis?
Please.
Alpha Protocol is a 2010 action role-playing game developed by Obsidian Entertainment and published by Sega. The player assumes control of Agent Micheal Thorton, a new recruit at a clandestine United States agency called Alpha Protocol, which is given unlimited resources to conduct covert operations on behalf of the government. Throughout the game, players must make many choices that affect the narrative. Played from a third-person perspective, players can confront enemies using firearms, gadgets, martial arts, and stealth. The game features extensive customization and a dialogue stance system that allows players to select dialogues based on 3 different tones.
Yeah, so this was my choice of game.
Yep.
How much of Alpha Protocol did you know before we started? Like, did you like kind of get what this game was, or were you going in blind?
I think I mentioned it in an earlier podcast. It might have been extra credit, actually, but the only thing I knew about the game is that the crouch walk was really funny. That's all I knew going in. And obviously I went in with an open mind because that's not enough to judge a game on. But I remember seeing a clip, some sort of montage or something, and they included that crouch walk. And I was like, oh, that is funny. They're not wrong. And I've always remembered it. So, yeah.
Well, the thing that I've kind of realized is like crouch walks, like it's not a thing like people ever really do in real life. No. It's like such a video, like crouch, especially crouch walking at the speed you crouch walk. Like people don't crouch walk in real life. I don't think like spies don't crouch walk in real life.
Also, not like Last of Us, that guy's crouch walking for like what, 10 hours? Like I'd be surprised if I could do 1 minute. Like it's so tiring trying to walk like that, and it's like clumsy and like it's just difficult. But to be fair, the crouch walking in Alpha Protocol probably also isn't much good. So,
well, it's weird because, like, I think we just accept from video games, like, oh, if you crouch walk, then you don't make noise or you make less noise. It's like, why? Like, I don't think I'd be any quieter trying to walk like hunched over than if I could, like, as well.
I'd be like,
yeah,
like, really
that's a specific ask thing. You'll be like, my hernia.
Yeah, exactly. My back.
But yeah, this is a game notable for things other than a slightly goofy crouch walk. So obviously you gave the synopsis. I didn't know too much about the game, but it just always came up in circles for like it's kind of right in the wheelhouse of cult classic. Like I would often just hear in like podcasts or video essays it always being kind of referenced as being, because of some of the flaws that we're going to get to later on, kind of overlooked and maybe slightly forgotten by the majority of gaming culture. But in like certain key areas, it has done things that were really impressive, 15 years ago.
Yep. And
some of them have still kind of not really been surpassed today, mostly with kind of some of the dialogue and the adaptive story. So I went into it knowing that, like, I knew it was buggy. I knew it was a bit janky. Yeah. I knew it had a troubled development. Like, I knew all of that. So I wasn't kind of going in thinking, this is a game that should have blown up but kind of didn't get its chance. Like, I knew, it didn't review very well back in the day. But I kind of wanted to see for myself, like, why are there people that still play and like discuss this game today? Like what's special about it? So I guess that's me justifying why I chose this game.
Yeah, of course. Also, like I didn't know it was. I thought it did really well. I didn't know any of that. So going in, I just thought it was a Xbox 360 shooter that I hear people talk about. So I assumed that it was fine. I didn't.
Oh no, yeah, it had a trouble. Like it had a prolonged development. It was meant to be made in I think 2.5 years. It ended up taking 4 years of development. They wanted to make a sequel, but that didn't happen with Sega. but basically, what it seems like happened during the development, from what I could find out, there's like a really good Eurogamer article from back in the day that kind of spoke about this that I found, is essentially they didn't really have a director for a big portion of the development, and it seemed like there was a lot of different games that they were kind of making at the same time. Like they knew they wanted it to be like a spy thriller RPG, which is a thing that you don't really get. They're very rare. There's a few, but there's not very many of them. So they knew they wanted to make that, but in terms of like the gameplay and the actual format of the game, it seems like that wasn't locked down until quite late in the development, and so it seems like they were kind of patching together content they've created, but there was a lot of stuff that they worked on that ended up getting thrown away. And so it seems like only towards the end were they working towards a singular vision. And I think that kind of meant that the game kind of probably, despite going over time, probably needed more time.
We've got a comment actually from Evan Hariardi about the development that goes through some of the things you just said in a bit more detail. It says, one interesting thing about Alpha Protocol was how it permanently changed Obsidian. Before Alpha Protocol, every Obsidian game had no director. There would be directors or leads for specific aspects of the game, so design decisions had to be settled between leads. Because of this, Alpha Protocol's biggest struggle was actually a lack of direction. The game had 3 versions, one with a plain QTE section that cost $500,000, a second one with skydiving, vehicle chases, and parkour environment interaction. Minigames used to take 3.5 minutes, and 3.5 minutes long, There were no save houses, and there was a complex custom AI system. Most of this was scrapped or retooled after 2 years, with Chris Avallone and Chris Parker taking charge of the third final version. According to programmer Steve Weatherly, after that, Alpha Protocol and every single Obsidian game had to have a director like a movie that was responsible for their vision. So there you go.
Mentioning the the AI there stands out to me because I know that one of the things that the game was meant to be is really advanced in terms of its AI for enemies, at least back in the day. And apparently, like it never saw the light of day, but there was this really in-depth system with the AI where the enemies would act really realistically and flush you out and like work as a team. But just on the platforms it came out on, kind of the 360 generation, it just completely tanked performance. Like it was just too computing intensive, and so they stripped that out. And I think they might have gone too far because
maybe.
because like to go from apparently like this really advanced system, and I wonder if it's a case where, because if you're aiming for it to be this thing and you're designing it to be like really in depth and complicated, it's probably difficult to strip it out to a more simple version compared to aiming towards that in the first place. And so, one of the standout parts of this game is the combat is that the AI is kind of very inconsistent and a little bit all over the place.
Well, I think the AI, what I noticed is that there's kind of 3 ways to play the game. So there's like, you can either go in all guns blazing, you can go in using gadgets, which is basically just throwables, or you can use martial arts. And the enemies also kind of fell into those categories. So it'll be like, there's a guy 20 meters away, but he will run all the way over to me because he wants to punch me without shooting. Or there'll be someone who just throws grenades continuously. So which means in your firefights, you're quite often continuously getting pelted with grenades, because if there's 2 people with that like archetype, they will just like hammer you out of cover. But I don't know if you think this is a good idea, but maybe we should talk about what the game's meant to be, like what it's trying to do, and then we'll talk about what it actually does, because otherwise we're just going to be jumping on this thing for an hour, basically.
Yeah, sure. Did you want me to do that?
Yeah, I mean, you played more of it than I did. This is the first time ever, I think, in Bonus Points history, we had somewhat of a mutiny, and I said, after the first zone, I'm not playing anymore, and I put my control, and even I was recording it, so all the footage is from the first zone only. I was like, even for the good of the show, I'm stepping out. I'm stepping out after the first 4 hours.
I think the only other one I can think of is Skyrim, but that was much more, we expected neither of us would finish it.
Yeah.
And I went above and beyond and just mainlined the main quest in the last few days and got to the end. So it's always the opposite. But so I did finish the game. So I kind of talk about, I guess, what the pitch essentially would have been for the game. So Obsidian Entertainment, for those that don't know, they're kind of famous for making well-written RPGs. Probably their most famous today still is Fallout New Vegas, is one of their most beloved. they've just had what's the game that just came out beginning
Avowed.
with E?
Avowed.
Avowed. Oh, beginning with E.
Evowed.
Avowed has recently came out as we're recording this. They did Outer Worlds as well. I think they did the first South Park game as well.
They
Stick
did,
of Truth.
yeah, they did.
I think they did. So this is the sort of games that they're making. So obviously, if you're watching the video version, watching the footage, you're thinking, oh, this looks like Splinter Cell again or something. But that really, it's kind of coming as an RPG first. So the idea is that you would start off kind of choosing like a different specialist, basically what Ollie was describing earlier for your play style, and then you would spec your character and you'd get new abilities. I guess if you kind of think more similar to Mass Effect for the way that would work. And then you're playing through the story where it was meant to be, in the levels, it's probably meant to feel a bit like a Splinter Cell. Like it's all real-time action. You're aiming, you're not pausing time to select abilities. It's kind of, third-person shooter spy game. Think of like a James Bond game or something. But the thing that was meant to be the standout is the really adaptive story. So if you think of kind of like Telltale or maybe some of Quantic Dream stuff where during conversations, you're making selections that drastically change the story. And it's not just, you've made decisions, which character will die, or you have a different ending. There's lots of granularity to the conversation system in terms of, who is your handler? Like, who's the person speaking to you on the microphone? Do you bring with, like, you could, there's people that, are a boss fight and you might have to kill, but you could speak to them and then they join your side and then they can become another handler to help you on missions.
Yeah.
Like it really could, there's so many different ways, like paths that it could go. And that's kind of did hold out. So I think that's kind of the pitch for the game. For probably what they intended.
And the fact that they've overlaid like an RPG mechanics to like what's normally like high fantasy or sci-fi or something, they've put it over espionage is actually really interesting, and is something that's like, I've never seen this done before, and maybe we'll never see it done again for right or wrong reasons. And then the same with the conversations. Like when I started this game, I texted you, Joe, and I was like, I think this is going to be really good. Like I was really excited because the opening, you're in the base and you first of all, you think you're breaking out of something or somewhere, but actually the whole thing's like a training session inside the base, which was really cool. And then you have these, when you speak to people, the conversation is like, they'll say something and then you can choose if you want to be like aggressive or professional or suave. Well, there's a few other ones you can pick as well.
But it doesn't just say that. It kind of gives you an indication of what they're going to say. It's not like you're just picking.
I think mine just said one of those three things.
So sometimes it does, but then sometimes it will be you can choose more specifically what you say. You don't see written out exactly what you're going to say, but it could be like, we should go to, where should we go? And you could have choose out of places or stuff.
Okay,
Sometimes you're kind of just choosing what type of Micheal Thornton you want to be.
Yeah, so like at the beginning, there's a part where you speak to this woman, and I was like, okay, I'm going to pick suave. And then he like makes some stupid joke, and like she like looks around a bit sheepishly and like tenses up, and I was like, this is like really good. It's like it's reacting this much to this. And then the other thing you have as well, which is a bit like the Telltale, is like they kind of remember it. So like you get rep with them. So if you say something that they really like, so if you're professional with your boss, you'll get more rep with them. But then if you're cocky with him, he'll be like, these upstart rookies, they think they know everything, but at the end of the day, they don't. And then you lose rep with him. And then that changes how he treats you during the mission, which is cool.
Yeah. And then the other thing is it's not even just a case of you want everyone to like you. Like apparently, like sometimes you don't want people to like you, and that can have benefits as well.
Yeah, I guess if you were like maybe speaking to a boss, like an enemy boss, or there was an interrogation, you might be able to get more out of them by making them squirm if they don't like you than if you're being friendly. But sometimes the plus or minus rep, like it appearing, would be a surprise. Like I would be like, why would he not like me for that, or why would they like me more for that? Especially with, there's a section where I spoke to like the big enemy guy who was like, he's trying to get away in a tank, and you blow him up, and then he comes out and he speaks to you for a bit, and I was getting like plus rep with him over and over again, and I was like, I'm trying to wind him up. But he likes it, he's enjoying it. But anyway, cool thing in theory, I guess. I
think the thing that it does really well for the dialogue system is it doesn't have really awkward pauses. Like the thing with Mass Effect is there'd be like, "Hey Shepard, like where should we go?" And then Shepard would kind of just stand there like,
Yeah.
just like just while you're like working out what to pick. Where here you have, like a time limit. So like while they're talking, you kind of see the options will come up, and then as you press it, like there's no delay. Like if you don't press anything, he will say one, and then there's also, they don't do the thing that like a lot of adventure games do with like a dialogue tree where it's like when someone's like, "Oh, do you want to know anything about the facility?" And there's like 5 things, and you're like, oh, "Okay, I'll go through. I want to ask about the base. I want to ask about the vehicle." And you go through the list of things, and it's like a really unnatural conversation because it doesn't know the order that you're going to pick them in. It doesn't do that. It's much more like a video game cutscene that you'd normally expect in terms of the pacing, but you are making decisions. And that they recorded, so there's 12 hours of cinematics. In any playthrough, you're only ever going to see about 4 hours of it. That shows just how divergent the story is and the amount of options. Like to the point where, so after like the beginning, you get to choose what location you want to go to next, and you can have a safe house, which is like a hub, and then you can go and do like side missions or main missions from there, and you can choose the order you do them in. And that seems to really affect the story, where people have been like, "Oh, why you only come to me now?" It's like, or someone will be like, "Oh yeah, because like we met in Rome," and I'll be like, "What would happen if I'd come here first? Like I wouldn't know who you were." And so like they would be like reversed. And even there's times when you show up and someone will be like, "Oh, good, like you're wearing like your stealthy gear that will help us blend in." It's like, like little things like that, which is done pretty natural. And I think one of the things with this game is I didn't realize when playing it how good the system is, because normally in these kind of games they just want to show it off. They're like, "Well, look, we've done all of this work. We need to prove it." Like Telltale, it will pop up on screen, or even the Quantic Dream games, you finish a mission and they'll be like, "Now let us show you the map of what you could have done." Like, look how many options we like animated. Whereas here, like there's so much stuff which is completely adaptive. Like in terms of like the final boss can change, or like you could not have to kill the boss because you could talk your way through it. And it was only through researching the game afterwards where I was like, I realized it, because it's so good, that side of it, that it's unimpressive when you're playing because you just don't know about it. You don't know what you're missing.
Yeah, I get that. But I will say that I decided that I was only going to pick really extreme choices, and nothing actually happened in mine. So I don't really know how effective it is. Like my handler, I was like, "Oh yeah, you're actually a spy," and she was like, "No, I'm not." Anyway, you need to go in through the front gate, and it's like, "Hey, I've just accused you of being like the one person we're looking for." I was like, "Yeah, it's you. You're the spy, aren't you?" And they're like, "Anyway," carried on talking about it. And then another time I was like, "Oh, have you got any more intel?" And they were just like, "No." I was like, what's going on here? Well, I felt a little bit like, why am I picking anything? I could pick anything and you would reply. But I guess maybe I just didn't. I was getting plus and minus rep as well, and it wasn't really affecting how people were treating me. Like I never got out of neutral. I was in neutral with everyone the whole time, even though I was like finding something they didn't like or finding something they did like and just picking that same option, like really extreme, and getting like plus rep, but never left
like
neutral.
I think that is mostly for like bigger changes in the narrative. Like I think like they're not going to re-record all of the dialogue for whether they like you or not. I think it will be, oh, they like you, they will offer to be a handler on a mission, or when given a choice, there's someone who it turns out early on, Mina, who you think is on your side, it turns out, oh, she's actually working for like an organization, she is a spy. And then is she going to choose to like stick with you or not, might depend on whether she likes you. So I think it's more like that rather than whether they're gonna like I think it's more about paths that you're going to go overall on the tree rather than like specifically the way they react to you in the moment, it seems. Maybe
that makes sense. The other thing that was really cool, which I think is very minor, but the safe houses. Having different safe houses that are one in each country. Like I saw you playing further than I got, and your safe house was different to the one that I had. So I kind of realized that every location has its own safe house. And then within the safe house, the stuff you can do is either like just do it on a menu, or you can do it like walk up to the gun cupboard and look at your guns. That stuff's cool. That stuff's good. So
yeah, and also there's the shop, so you can buy and sell equipment, that kind of changes like the way your weapons work or like armor mods and stuff. But then the other thing you can do is on your computers, you get emails where often after a mission, you'll get like follow-up emails about what happened. And then you can even make choices in those emails where you can reply to them in different ways. And sometimes they might send you money, and that can actually quite affect things as well. And I thought it was quite unique because when you're doing the dialogue decisions, you will pick suave. And he'll make like an awful joke. You're like, you don't know what suave is. There was a joke. I watched the zero punctuation review of the game when he was saying that option, like you might as well save time and pepper spray yourself when you do that option, because it's normally him just doing a horrible like chat up line to like one of the many young female people that he can team up with on it. But in the emails, you actually you'll pick the option and you'll see it fully written out. And there's, I think, some of the best writing in the emails.
I guess it makes sense to the emails as well because it's not like a back and forth conversation, so you do have a bit more time to like, read it and think about what you're doing. So pretty cool addition. But I think for me, that's probably it for positives. I don't know what else you've got.
I mean, some might come up. Later on. I mean, it's. We could both see why this game wasn't a giant hit, and I think with what we've said, if you stopped listening to the podcast now, your takeaway might be like, oh, it's got a great story or great characters or great dialogue writing, which I think it's like I wouldn't say the writing's bad, but it's just like a lot of kind of rather stereotyped characters, which might be like I didn't realize how goofy this game was going to be. It's really campy, over the top characters, but then Micheal Thorton might be even up there with LA Noire for just one of the most unlikable characters.
He's
ever. No matter what option.
Something about he's like more off-putting than James Sunderland from Silent Hill 2. Like something about him is so uncomfortable, like to the point where making him look stupid was like fun for me. Like I was like, I'm going to make him say the most stupid thing, and I'm going to sit here and laugh at him. And like, I think normally I'm very positive, and I'm out of the two of us, I'm the one that's normally like, oh, this thing doesn't work very well, but like the game's got a good heart, so I don't mind. But for me, this game was like just completely the other way around, and all the stuff you just said about the dialogue and that, like, it is true, but it doesn't matter because the main character is horrible. His friends are dull. Like, everything is forgettable. I can't remember a single person's name, and I've spoke to these people for 4 hours. And the cool thing that I liked, where I like made that awful joke to the woman, and she like looked a bit embarrassed, and I was like, oh, this is actually cool. Kind of just disappears after that because you spend the whole time speaking to a television. So you lose all of that. Like, oh, I'm speaking to someone face to face. It was just like, you go on a Zoom call and then you can just walk out the room and they just carry on talking as if you're still standing there. And like, so like all of that kind of just disappeared for me. But I think the worst thing about it is if you imagine just the absolute worst third-person shooter you've ever played. Every single thing in a third-person shooter that you expect to work doesn't work. Like, there is nothing in this game that works. Like, just for a very simple example, is like cover systems in games, right? You're like, okay, that's waist high. I can see an enemy. I press a button, I go up against it. In this game, there is nothing marking what is cover and what isn't. So at any time, you could be like, oh, I'm going to snap into cover, and you just don't do anything. So that system fundamentally doesn't work. And
even if it is cover, it's still, or like getting in and out of it is always awkward. And it's the A button, which is also like everything else. Like, it's so the amount of times I want to go into cover and I'm like picking things up and stuff.
And not only that, the stealth system, so the stealth, which is one of the multiple play styles, it just doesn't work. Like, you thought it was bugged. I thought it was bugged. We looked it up. It just doesn't work. Like, enemy sight lines are, I don't know if they're unlimited or if they can see around walls or what. The alarms, they have like an alert system. So they'll like spot you and turn on an alarm. Doesn't matter if you seem to reload or if you leave the area or change level. If the alarm was on previously, the alarm is still going to be on now. And even if you turn off the alarm and go like to another area, their alarm might be on. So everyone just seems to know where you are at all times, which is a shame because the alarm minigames, all the hacking minigames are actually pretty good. So,
Yeah, I was surprised. They get in the later levels.
yeah,
There's just too many of them because they all get longer. Like
yeah.
so they take longer to do. But yeah, they were all three of them are really
Yeah, they're
good.
good.
Like
Original.
hacking,
Yeah,
yeah.
but the yeah,
But
like
too many of them. I'm glad they weren't 3 minutes or whatever.
yeah,
long.
yeah. I think like basically because the stealth system doesn't work, the cover system doesn't work. We haven't really talked about it, but aiming and shooting also doesn't work.
Why is the crosshair so
Crosshair's like the
big?
size of the whole screen, so it's like basically you could shoot anywhere in the middle 80% of your screen. Like it's just the edges you can't hit. So like because those systems don't work, that
But not
means,
accurately. Like to do an accurate shot, you have to stay aimed on them for ages, and it
Yeah.
really slowly makes the crosshair go down. And like for stealth, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
But that's the system for like if you're playing run and gun. It's like, oh, I have to stand. If you can't move, if you move, your aim goes worse.
Yeah,
You have to stand still and like stay aiming and waiting for this crosshair to slowly thin down.
And the thing that's
feels
like,
bad.
yeah, you can stealth or you can go in guns blazing or you can talk or you can use gadgets. Like you can't, you have to go guns blazing. That's it. Because there's no other way of doing the other things. Like you recommended to me that I changed my stealth suit so I was quieter. Made no difference. Like,
No, there's a mod that changes the view that they can see you. And
Right.
there's also because I did about 50-50. I always started stealth.
Yep.
But then once stealth went, I went and shot them. So after a few upgrades, there's abilities that make it so you your footsteps makes no sounds. There's one which you can literally just turn invisible and you can just run
Oh, wow.
around and just take people out, for like
Yeah.
10 seconds or something. And then another one which means when you first get spotted, you just turn invisible automatically for a bit and you have a few seconds to kind of get to cover.
Okay.
And so that, and then another thing where it allows you that little crosshair aiming thing for the pistol.
Yeah.
It allows you to focus the crosshair while in cover, and then you can just blind fire, like shoot around the corner, which means like the most accurate way to do it is to be in cover, aim, and then you kind of go like bloop and just like get a headshot, like and take him out. So with those things, it made stealth like a viable option.
Yeah, because even the hand-to-hand combat seems to raise the alert. So like if you find a guy on their own and batter them in a corridor and there's no one else around, the alert will still, or like the alert might not go, but everyone will kind of like know that you're there and then kind of run towards the alarm. So yeah, like that just not working was weird. And then also the weapon wheel for choosing weapons, probably the worst weapon wheel I've ever used. I couldn't figure out, like, you press the button and you get two weapon wheels, right? So you think like that's the two analog sticks. It's not. Like it's the D-pad to select any of the 8 things on the 2 wheels. And then you can also change wheels as well. And I was like, couldn't figure out how to select anything. And I was just like, this is actually just terrible. And I don't know what I'm doing with this. So I just stuck with the machine gun. But because every time I fired my silence pistol, they knew where I was anyway, it didn't really make much of a difference. So I just stuck with the machine gun pretty much the whole time. But yeah, even the, I haven't even talked about the fact that the AI are like, a barrel will explode next to them and they won't notice. But like you could be climbing a ladder in an enclosed space and they'll raise the alarm. So it's like, what? I don't understand how they work. So
Also, the animations are pretty janky all over, but like one of the things that is really actually matters for gameplay is when they're doing like a patrol back and forth, is they'll walk, and then when they've got to turn the other way, they just flip. So like there's no like then like turn or sometimes it would bug and they would flip, but a lot of the time they would walk and then they would just be facing the other way immediately.
And there was other weird things as well where like you could be upstairs in a building across the way and they would spot you, but if you were above them on a slope, they couldn't see you. So like it's just stuff that I couldn't figure out, like if I was in the sight line or not. And then also it ended up basically just being like me running around gunning everyone down the best I could. Some enemies would like float away or get stuck spinning around or anything like that really. And then on top of all that, you're kind of invincible. You seem to take a long time to die. And then when I did die, I don't think the checkpoint system actually worked, or I was so deep in the bugs at that point, I don't know if it was bugged or what was going on with the checkpoint system, because I seemed to respawn in and sometimes the objectives would be done and sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes the alarm would still be going when I respawn in. So I just don't know. Yeah, what was going on? That was a big deep dive into the gameplay. The moment-to-moment gameplay is like that, without mentioning the fact that the plot is just boring, and it's like tired stereotypes. Like every stereotype you can imagine is here. Like it's just brutally
So
bad.
obviously you decided pretty early on
Yeah,
that that you weren't going to attempt to finish it, and you kind of said basically you wanted to finish the first area, and
yeah,
then that was going to be
yeah.
your stopping point. So what was it, the gameplay or the story or both? Like what pushed you away from being like, oh, I'm not going to even see this through?
It was definitely the gameplay, the not being able to stealth, the alarms constantly going, not being able to turn off the alarms, and then like not being able to shoot the end. Basically, it's just it was much more the gameplay than the plot, but also like, one feeds into the other. So like the more I was getting annoyed with the gameplay, the more I was getting annoyed with the plot. But yeah,
I guess if the plot was amazing, you might be like, oh, I'll put up with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
gameplay to see the plot. But when it's like the gameplay is what we have described, and then you get to a story cutscene and it's just horrible Micheal Thorton just
yeah.
flirting with someone he's just met in a horrible way. It's just
Also,
like,
the
oh,
cutscene
man.
direction was just also bad. Like so many of the cutscenes
Yeah.
are just two people talking, looking at each other. There's no dynamic camera movement, and also it
But
randomly.
the facial animation was quite good.
Well, yeah,
But
exactly. So I
there's
had
no
that.
dynamicism in terms of like the way they cut around or anything.
Yeah.
And it's probably hard because of how adaptive and how many options there are. It's probably difficult to kind of have interesting cinematography when there's so many different ways it could go. But I think the production values overall are just quite low. Like I think like the audioscape doesn't stand out. Like the environments are all a bit bland and don't kind of really make sense. There's like there's an emergency exit sign, but then like not a door under it. Like there's like things like that. And then even like one of the big things in the levels is there's like loads of stuff for you to find. Like a big part of the game is money. And like getting money to upgrade your equipment. And like sometimes you could be like, oh, I'm going to partner with obviously a bad person, like a terrorist, but they're going to give me like 200 grand. And that means I could I could buy the best gun that there is, and so like that's a decision you can make. So you can find like money and like mods and stuff as you go and explore. But they have so many points of no returns in levels where like I was like exploring like a mansion and I go through a door and I'm like, oh, this is obviously like where I'm meant to go for the next bit. And I turn back and the door doesn't open again. And it's like, oh, I know I've missed loads of stuff. So it's just like, it's so frustrating because it's like, okay, well, there goes, like a load of money or stuff that I could have found. And that kept happening and driving me crazy. Or
Also,
like you'd walk through, there'd be an explosion, just rubble falls down behind you. It's like, oh, great.
The other thing, one of my checkpoints, one of my autosaves was just before a locked door, but it was locked with like a little padlock, like a shed lock. But when you try and unlock it, if you do it wrong, it sets off the alarm. And it's like, how are you setting off the alarm? Like, it's a little shed lock. Also, I don't know if it's because I was using like a super modern controller, but my trigger sensitivity was like really high. So I was really struggling with basically all the unlock ones. I ended up just having to smash the door down because like I just couldn't.
I played on Steam Deck and that was fine. Basically, you have to gradually press down the left trigger to kind of line up a pin, and then press right trigger to pick a lock. Is what that minigame is.
Good minigame.
Yeah, that was good. I really like the hacking minigame, where it's basically all these characters like flicking really fast, but some of them aren't moving, and you got to line them up. And then the other one, which was really simple but still quite fun, is basically like a kid's maze puzzle on a menu where you just have to like follow, like, here's number 1, follow the trail to the bottom and like cut that wire. But they ended up, at the end you're doing like 7 of them in like one go. Like they end up getting quite squiggly. But with the time pressure and knowing it's going to set off an alarm, like there was a bit of intensity, and it doesn't pause time as well when you're doing them.
No. But yeah, I mean, obviously all the stuff we talked about with the gameplay, like, this is the worst game I've ever played, I'd say. This is the worst game that I feel like at its basic functionality, like if you take any of the systems in this game, all of them fail pretty quickly. They all fail. Even the conversation stuff, which is cool, fails because everyone is so boring. Like, which is a shame. It would be like being like, oh, our game's got the best gun physics you can ever imagine. Like, it's so realistic. And it's like, oh, what do you shoot? It's like, you shoot one target and it doesn't move. That's the game. Like, that's kind of what this is like. It's like, this conversation system is super cool, but you kind of don't even want to use it because it means you have to speak to people and you don't want to speak to them. So it's just, I cannot believe that in 2010 this game released and people didn't all just give it 1 out of 10. Like, I'm that shocked. Like, the website that I go to, Destructoid, which is like, they align with my kind of taste, they gave it a 2. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But like, it was getting like 6s and 7s. So not abysmally
I mean, it was
bad.
a different time. So what actually happened? So it was meant to. They basically finished it in 2009.
Yep.
And then there was like, I can't remember what it was, but there was other big games coming out that year. And so Sega were like, okay, no, we're going to wait until next year to release it.
Right.
But they didn't give enough funding to Obsidian for them to like carry on working on it.
Right.
So
Yeah, see,
there was like a skeleton crew, like, were just trying to fix as many bugs as they could, but they couldn't afford to like continue development. And then Mass Effect came out and like a bunch of other big games came out. So like it's one of those things because it's always like, not like I'm someone who wants to like side with the man here, but like there's so many times when like something like this would happen and it's very easy to be like, blame the publisher and like, oh, the publisher came in and made them change it or they needed more funding or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like Sega were actually pretty good here. They weren't at all heavy-handed for what type of game they could make. Apparently it was like a really light pitch. They were like, we want to make a spy RPG basically. And Sega were like, okay, good luck, And so, but it seems like Obsidian Entertainment just weren't organized. They just didn't have a good structure. They didn't have a strong vision.
Yeah.
And Sega did continue to fund them for, double the amount of time that, was originally agreed. And then eventually they were like, no, this is enough.
Like come to an end, yeah.
Yeah. It seems like it seems like it was a learning experience for Obsidian, definitely, because they've made some great things since this.
And they've made great games before this too, didn't they?
Yeah, like the Pillars of Eternity games.
Yeah, it's just it was just weird, like, because also Sega, I think around this time, published Binary Domain, which also has a conversation system in it, which is obviously not the same as this. It's quite similar. I think you can choose, what you're going to reply.
It's like during combat, isn't it? I think you can talk. Yeah,
that game's cool, man. Maybe we could do that. That's a cool game. But yeah, I just think I don't know what you think, but yeah, I think like it's just so the game is unusable. I've no idea how you stuck with it all the way to the end. Like, hats off to you, man. But for me, it felt like I was using a piece of software that doesn't work properly. Like, I really felt that playing this game.
I think what helped for me, as I kind of mentioned earlier, is I was playing on the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
Whereas you were playing on your PC, and I know there was a few issues you had with the PC as well.
Yeah.
And like it's you're playing where you've been working all day, and neither of us really like playing PC games that much.
No.
Unless we have to. But for me, because I could play on Steam Deck, I could either like lounge on the sofa, or I played it on some train journeys. I mentioned to you I had to get my car serviced, so I had to wait around for a couple hours. So like I had I was choosing between like looking at my phone or like playing a different, like a Switch game or something, compared to like it wasn't like, I had the world of opportunities for when I played. And so and then I got to a certain point where I was like, you know what? Like, looking up the mission list, I'm like 70% through.
Let's go for it.
Just because obviously, whenever we do these kind of cult classic games, we always have the bonus points community here. But there's always a few people that are fans of these games that kind of are consuming everything.
Yeah.
And they'll come out, like when we did like the Ridge Racer episode, we had a lot of people that
don't
watch bonus points, but they're Ridge Racer people, and so they're like hearing this conversation. So I'm always aware that there's probably a few people that are really big fans of this game, and so I kind of felt like, I can, if I didn't say I saw the credits roll, I didn't see him riding off at his speedboat into the sunset. That's doing a most awful speech. Then they could say, well, you haven't seen the way it paid off. So I saw it to the end, and it didn't change my opinions. There's one other line I just want to mention where they were mentioning this character called Madison. And I can't remember exactly what the setup was, but they're basically saying like, oh, do you want to like help her or something like like, do you want to like reach out to her or whatever? And one of the options just said interested, and I was like, okay, I'll do interested because yeah, like I want to do that. And the line he said was, "Did you see her picture? There's no way I'm missing out on that action." And I was like, oh my god, that's the worst. Like, and I'm meant to be like playing and rooting for this character. It's like I feel like dirty. Like it's like, and
he sucks
throughout
so
the
bad.
whole game. And then like the problem is the game. It's like the game, like that is not a character point. Like that he's like sleazy or horrible. Like it's like no one knows. Like he gets away with it. Like there was an option just to like. In a conversation that made no sense, I could just press kiss, and it just led to like a sex scene. And it's like there was no chemistry here.
Yeah,
like and there was, and then like you meet like this. I showed you a picture of it, like this Russian like military person.
I'll put her on the screen now.
Yeah, you can see like her red bra showing,
yeah.
and like her. Yeah, like with this giant machine gun, and then like you end up talking to her, and then like. Like if she starts liking you, like your other person, like handler, starts like getting jealous, and they're like fighting over you, and it's like, could you do no better than Micheal Thornton? Like they're going for like James Bond, but like they're closer to James Pond. It's like you see exactly what they're going for, but the writing for that type of character is so all over the place, and because you're making decisions, it's not like I'm the aggressive Micheal Thornton, and I'm going to pick aggressive the whole way through. Like, that's not interesting. Don't make me just make one selection at the beginning. Like, I'm making decisions based on different circumstances. But it just means he's just all over the place. It's like his character completely changes. The delivery from the voice actor completely changes based on what you're doing. So he doesn't even feel like a complete character. Like, he feels like he's got like a multi-person, like a personality disorder or multiple personalities. It's like it's so bad for like the thing that it's meant to like be a standout for. Like the way it diverges and stuff, like it is super impressive that they were able to like map that out. Like it must have been insanely difficult with all of the things that it's considering, but it was all in service of a really bad, uninteresting story with mostly unlikable characters, and so it all fell apart.
Yeah, and also the whole thing with like, oh, it's really customizable. Like you make your own Micheal. It's like, well, which haircut do you like? You choose a haircut, and they're like, okay, and you're done. Like, off you go. Like you can't really customize that much of him. But what you were just saying about James Bond, Evan Hariardi wrote in again and said for Alpha Protocol, they settled on 3 prototypes of the 3 JBs: James Bond, Jason Bourne, and Jack Bauer. So basically, they're the 3 things that you can kind of lean into. I don't actually know much about Jason Bourne. I've never seen the Bourne films, but I can totally see Jack Bauer and James Bond as the other 2.
Yeah, I don't know Jack Bauer, so...
Oh, he's like really aggressive. He'll be like, oh, to a woman, like, tell me where your husband is, and she won't answer, and he'll like shoot her in the knee. It's one of the scenes he does in 24.
Okay, because I wouldn't have Jason Bourne as professional would be like the other one, because he's like, his whole thing is he's rogue from his organization, so he's like scrappy and improvisational, and like, I'm gonna fight you, I've only got a pen. Like he's like that kind of...
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that goes under professional, but maybe it's just all more about like the personality, I guess.
Yeah.
He's quite a straight character, maybe.
We've got one comment from someone who played along. If you're ready for that.
Bless them, yeah.
Well, it was Blake from our Discord who famously has played every game we've ever covered. And they said, Obsidian is my favorite game studio of all time. And then drop the line. And said, Alpha Protocol is the worst game I have ever played. The only joy I felt while playing was when my save file soft-locked, giving me an excuse to stop playing this strange form of torture. So there we go. There we go.
Dear.
I mean,
we got a comment a while ago from... It was after we did World of Goo.
Yeah.
And someone saying about... Because like, we weren't anywhere near as negative as we've been here, but we weren't hot on it.
Yeah.
And they were sort of saying like, oh, it seemed like, you know, you guys weren't that into the game. Like, why did you pick it? And so I just to cover for that is we're not trying to pick the best games. We're picking games that we think will be interesting, but often we're picking games that we've not played before. So just to be clear, like we're not a channel that, like, our goal is never to pick a bad game and dunk on it. Yeah. And I do think there is things that are interesting in this game here.
On paper, I would say on paper. I don't think they
I'm not-
pull off any.
I
As far as
think
I
it is-
played, 4 hours is quite a lot of playing it. They didn't pull off really anything. That
No. But there's things that are interesting.
Yeah.
But like they don't in practice. Like it didn't work.
Mm.
But it's still like interesting and can still be impressive. Like it wasn't fun. It didn't create enjoyment. But
Yeah.
you can still like see like how impressive it is.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Well, with that, shall we put it on the list?
Yeah, let's put it on the list.
Okay. Did you know we have a Patreon? Maybe you're unsure what that is.
Patreon allows you to support us directly, and in return, you get exclusive stuff, access to our Discord server, behind-the-scenes content, and an exclusive podcast series.
Your support means we can up our production and continue making fun videos. You can join us at patreon.com/the bonus points. And it has a free trial too.
Woohoo!
Okay, here's the list. And what I've realised from when I edit these is that what I always do is copy and paste another game and then change the title. I always do it from the area that the game kind of ends up in. And for this one, I have done it from 80. This is where I copy and pasted it from. So just as it's starting, you can see it's already down here in the bottom section. And I think it might be a case of arguing it up rather than arguing it down, if you get my drift.
I mean, should we just move it down a little bit? Say thanks for watching.
Do you know what? I think I would still put it above LA Noire, because I think LA Noire is like fundamentally evil and needs to be erased from this planet, whereas Alpha Protocol is just not very good. Well, not very good to a very extreme degree, but still just not very good.
I think LA Noire is better than it. I think it has more. Like if we take the story, like the stories are. If we take the story aside,
Yep.
like driving around
works.
LA from
Yep.
that era, like I think if we were comparing Alpha Protocol to like that recreation of LA from that era that you can drive around and look at,
Yeah.
I think LA Noire like wins. Like even like I was playing the Switch version of LA Noire, so I didn't even get as good of an experience of that. I think that. Like I think they both failed on their promise, and I think the stories is the biggest letdown for both of them.
Yeah.
But I think LA Noir's high points are better. Like I think it works better.
Definitely.
Than Alpha Protocol.
Like LA Noire's interrogation system doesn't work. Like that was one of the main gripes we had of it. But shooting does work. Like it works enough. It's fine. It's passable. Driving works as well, and also driving, having your guy sitting in your passenger seat telling you which way to go is pretty cool. Whereas Alpha Protocol's like conversation system I didn't really care about it or didn't really find it working much. But also the shooting doesn't work. So like it just LA Noir's definitely better, but I mean it was pretty awful, wasn't it? LA Noire, it's pretty horrible.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it is more. I guess Alpha Protocol is more cringy. Rather than
Alpha
you know what,
heart's in its right place. I think they're trying to make something funny.
Yeah. I mean, I think they wanted to make something cool, and they really failed at that. But like, I've been watching recently. MinMax have been reacting to the old video game awards when they were on Spike TV, which are like really cringy. They're really like made for like early to mid 2000s, like teenage boys in their bedrooms. It's all about like fart jokes and boobs and so, and it's just like the culture is so gross.
It's like Micheal Thorton stuff.
Yeah, well, that's this and like this game kind of came out like kind of at least towards the tail end of that period, and like this game feels like, oh yeah, this is a game kind of that era. Like this is a very 360 feeling game, and it feels like it's going for like that market, which wasn't what I was kind of expecting. I wasn't expecting for an Obsidian game, like the kind of the misogyny and kind of like that kind of grossness of it. Like that isn't what I was expecting from this. Maybe I should have a little bit more. It like kind of watching those, I was like, oh yeah, like it makes sense that then they would announce Alpha Protocol like like at one of these events maybe.
Well, I think the like misogyny stuff is worse in LA Noire than it is in this.
Yeah, it is. But like you, at least with LA Noire, you
I
can
can't
be like,
believe we're arguing about the very bottom. Like, this is a level. But no, please go on. I'm interested. Please go on. We are arguing about 80 and 81. But yeah.
like I think like with LA Noire, it's like, well, it's a period piece where
Yeah.
like, you know, sex. It wasn't even seen as sexism at the time. It was just seen as like, oh, that's your role. Is you do treat your wife that way or whatever, and to get her in line because you're the boss, because you're the man. You know, it's like games. You know, I remember for BioShock Infinite, you know, obviously has racism, and then like Ken Levine was like asked about like kind of what the message is there, and he was saying like, well, a big part is it's set during a time where the world was racist. Like if there wasn't racism, it would be weird because that's like because it's set during that time, so you know, like we couldn't really not include it. And I feel like LA Noire goes way further than it needs to for a video game, to where it saps the fun out of it, and it, you know, it could have at least been like your lead character is kind of more against it than they are. You know, like it doesn't make it any more fun or enjoyable when you're playing it, but at least you can say, oh, they're trying to be more representative of the time. Whereas Alpha Protocol is kind of, you know, is a modern, you know, slash maybe even futuristic setting where it wasn't as required.
Yeah. Okay, well look, 80 or 81. Like, I think where Alpha Protocol fails in its gameplay, LA Noire fails in its content and also its development was awful. So it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Like, they're both bad, but I feel like LA Noire is fundamentally evil, whereas Alpha Protocol is just bad. So
that's a good point. And I think I think with LA Noire, it seemed like some of the heads of the company were just bad exploitative people.
Yeah.
Whereas Obsidian Entertainment, like they were maybe at that time just maybe a little bit naive
or mismanaged, maybe a little bit mismanaged.
Yeah, well, because they were naive, you know, a little bit, you know, scope creep and a little bit of a lack of direction, and they've managed to sort that out. You know, yeah, you've kind of convinced me. Let's do, you know, maybe we'll revisit in the future, but let's move Alpha Protocol up.
Yeah, there we go. And
So
do you know what?
80.
I got to the final section of Beyond Good and Evil. So as far as I'm concerned, it's better than Alpha Protocol. So there we go.
Yeah,
and you finished
Beyond
it.
Good
You
and
finished
Evil
them both.
doesn't feel gross.
No.
It's purely just, I mean, to be fair, Alpha Protocol has better stealth than Beyond Good and Evil. So
I don't know if it
does have
does.
that.
I don't know if it does.
It does.
'Cause Beyond
It
Good and
does. Once
Evil
you get
has
those-
stealth in sections, whereas Alpha Protocol has stealth through the whole game, and it doesn't work.
No, but I think that's the, you know, it's like whenever, say if there's a game that isn't a driving game, and they're like, oh, we have a driving section, you're like, oh, but that's gonna be rubbish. Because it's like, you know, like, it's like
But mate,
the Beyond Good and Evil, the amount of times I had to go through those same
Beyond
bits
Good and
'cause I kept
Evil has got
failing.
that. Do you remember that one room where you like drop down from the top, and it's like
Yeah.
every room in Alpha Protocol is like that. That is every room in Alpha Protocol.
It's not, because in Beyond Good and Evil, if you get spotted, you're done. In Alpha Protocol, if you get spotted, you shoot your way out and you carry on. Like you can keep progressing.
That's true.
I think that's the. I'm not saying to put it above Beyond Good and Evil. Like it has the Beyond Good and Evil soundtrack alone has put a barrier there. So, yeah. Sorry, Alpha Protocol. Probably not what you wanted. I don't know why I'm speaking as if you're a person in the room. Sorry, Michael.
Yeah, he'd probably just make like a sexist joke about you anyway, so I wouldn't worry about what he's got.
He's just call us nerds. He's gonna go get some hot babes. But yeah, at number 8 in the list, and so because it's been a while since we've read out kind of the bottom of the list, do you want to maybe go kind of just 76 to 81 for those that are listening?
So number 76 is Enslaved: Odyssey to the West, Xbox 360, third-person action game. Then we have underneath that Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets on the PS2, 77. 78 is Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. 79 is Beyond Good and Evil. 80 is Alpha Protocol. 81 is LA Noire, and that's currently the very bottom. Very, very bottom of the list. I don't have any big moves to make this week, but I have been looking at the top section of our list because there is really, even though we don't try and pick the best games ever made, the top 25 is starting to like go that way. And I do feel like there's a couple of games in there that can't hang with the top 25 best games ever made. But I've got nothing to stop them with. So maybe I'll think about it and come back. Also, the other thing about Protocol is playing it now when there are loads of games that let you do, like, look at Baldur's Gate 3. It's got it's like Alpha Protocol on steroids. Like, also the characters are great and the voice acting's great and the story's great and it's diverse. Like, but obviously we're talking about 15 years of.
Yeah, there's a reason why there's 78 games in between them on our list. We've accounted for that.
Yeah, true. Okay, do you want to hear what is coming up?
I would love to.
Okay, so next time on March 7th, we have Dragon Quest Heroes Rocket Slime on the DS, our first DS game, which I'm excited about opening the door to DS games. That'll be pretty fun. March 21st, we have Fear, the shooter from 2006, 2005, around then. I can't remember when it's around. It's a horror-themed shooter. April 4th, we have Natsumon 20th Century Summer Kid, which is on the Switch and PC.
And PC, yeah.
And PC, yeah. And then April 18th, we have Dead Island 2, which is on Game Pass. So there we go. That's what's coming up.
Awesome. Let's see which ones of those we get through.
Well, someone commented on one of our upcoming posts on one of the social media platforms, basically like, oh, so nothing in the top 10 then. And I want to be surprised.
If you had to put money on one of them getting into the top 10,
yeah,
which one would you put money on?
Dragon Quest.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's also actually mentioning the first time ever we've had someone else record the gameplay footage for us, and they finished Dragon Quest really quickly. And they were like, yeah, it's really fun. So there you go. And also I love Dragon Quest, so hopefully I can argue it off a bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe I'll be arguing it up. Who knows? Maybe I'll like it more than you. I really don't know anything about this game, and don't tell me, because I'm going to start playing it tomorrow while traveling, and I'm looking forward to going in blind. My 3DS is charging as we speak, raring to go.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's going to be the end of this podcast here. We'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss Dragon Quest. Of course, we also have our Extra Credit podcast where we discuss whatever we want. Sometimes video games, sometimes TV shows, sometimes shenanigans that we've been up to. In the last episode, I spoke about when I went up to London to do an experience.
Ooh,
an interactive experience, and I will say no more.
Yeah, and I will also say Joe now likes the WWE. Maybe those two things are linked. Maybe. They're not.
But yeah, so feel free to check that out. There's links down below. So that's our Patreon exclusive podcast that we've been doing for a long time now. So there's a whole bunch of them, as well as a bunch of other stuff. So if you want to kind of see how that works or sign up for the free trial, you can find out information for how to do that down below.
Yeah, sweet. I think that was a lovely little plug, and I think we're done.
Okay, cool, amazing. So thanks so much, guys, for watching or listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.